I want to show you two of the feet that come with many of our Janome machines that will allow you to get a nice professional finish on your inside seams, like the edges of your fabric. Be able to keep those from fraying, especially if you don't have a serger. This is a great option to use. We have two feet that come with most of the machines. Foot C is our over edge foot, and you can find that one easily. It has small little brush guide on it. And the other foot is going to be our over edge foot, and that is foot M. And it does not have the brush on it, but it does have a little flange, which will help to guide our edges along as we go. There are a couple different stitches that we can use on our machine, so I'll walk you through each of those and how they look and what they are best used for. The one thing to keep in mind, no matter what stitch I show you that you're using for either of these feet, you will want to make sure that the stitch width is set to 4.5 or higher. If it's any less than a stitch width of 4.5, the needle can run in and hit some of the little tines that are in here to keep our fabric edges nice and flat while we're sewing. So just make sure when you're checking that before you start sewing that that's the case. And let's get started with some of these different edge finishing options. Right now I'm using the over edge foot C to treat the edges of my fabric before I actually sew my seams. So if you're doing a skirt or a jacket and you want to finish those edges before you actually sew your seams, this is a great option for that. What you'll do is line your fabric up along the edge of the flange that's attached to the brush on the over edge foot, and we'll be using just a regular zigzag stitch for this one, and the width will be set at 4.5 or 5. You can even go a little wider if you want, just don't go any smaller than 4.5. So we'll go ahead and sew this, and then we can seam our pieces of fabric together using a normal straight stitch. And now we've got our pieces here that have a nice finished non-fraying edge on them that we can use to then sew our two pieces together without worrying about them fraying. This is also a great option. I like using this option if you know that you're going to be pressing your seams open and not to one side, because this finishes the edges of the seam separately versus some of our other options, which will take both of our fabrics once they're already sewn right sides together and finish the edges together. So if you're looking to keep a really flat seam that you'll be pressing open, then this is a perfect option for that. All right, this time I am still using the over edge foot C, and using another one of the over edge stitches that are available on your Janome machine. This one's actually a combination of a zigzag and a straight stitch. So when you're looking for the stitch, it should look something like this one here. And it's got a zigzag with a straight stitch on the left. This is a great finishing stitch if you want to seam your project and finish the edges at the same time. So it will give you a straight stitch for that actual seam on your project and an edge stitch to go over that edge. So let me show you how this one works and looks on the machine. All right, and that is how easy that one is. And you can see right here that it has both the zigzag edge already finished off for us, as well as our straight seam. When I open this up, then you will see that I have my seam actually finished and done stitching. And then on the back, I've already got the edges finished. This one does do the edges together. So on the inside, you won't be able to open the seams and press them flat. These ones will go to either edge because they are finished together. But that is another stitch that you can use for many of your projects. This last stitch using the over edge foot is called a double over edge seam. And this stitch works very similar to the over edge stitch that we just used that combines the zigzag and the straight stitch, except this one has what looks like a double zigzag, and this will make that one great for being able to use it on very fine fabrics that will really fray a lot. It gives you some extra insurance there on the side that it won't fray by having that double zigzag stitch. So this is the stitch that you'll want to look for, and we'll sew it the same as the other ones that we've done on the over edge foot. And that is the double edge stitch. You can see that we've got a lot of extra stitching there as far as the zigzag, and we still have our straight stitch as well. For this final finishing stitch, I have switched my foot from the over edge foot to the overcast foot, which is foot M. This foot looks very similar to foot C, but it does not have the brush. And we will use the overlock stitch for this one. The overlock stitch will give you a stitch that looks very similar to what a professional overlocking machine would give you on a stitch. It still works the same though. There's a little flange, and we will just follow the edge of our fabric along that flange to give us our finished seam edges. That right here is what the overlock stitch will look like when we're done. It goes ahead and it does your straight seam along this side. It does then what looks like a serged or overlocked edge by using this foot and that stitch. You can see when we open it, we have a nice flat seam that's sewn right here, and it has finished the edges very nicely here in what looks like a serged edge, but is in fact done on your regular sewing machine. So on the over edge foot, we get asked a lot, well, what's the reason for the little bit of that brush attached to the foot? And here's the reason why I wanted to show you what they look like. If you see this first seam right here on top, that's our first zigzag stitch that we did with our over edge foot to finish it off, but I used a regular foot for this one, and you can see that it looks smaller than our one that we actually use the over edge foot on. What happens is when you don't have that brush and you use a regular foot to do your zigzag stitch, it takes the fabric and kind of wraps it around and makes it pretty bulky. So you have a bit of bulk in here, and it's not a nice flat finished edge, versus having that little brush makes this edge nice and flat so that you don't end up with extra bulk in the seams of your project. So that little brush actually makes a big difference, and you can see here we've got a really bulky seam and a nice flat seam. I hope that you found this short video helpful in finding a way to finish your edges and get that nice professional finish on the inside of your projects.